Scarface came out in 1932 and is widely considered as the greatest pre-code gangster film ever made. Is it as good as the Al Pacino one? Is it better? Is it worse? We're going to get into it today on the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Golden Hour Film Podcast. My name is Harry Bailey. I'm joined by my co-host, not guest host, Shane Mulvaney. Shane, how are you today?
Two words, Harry. Two words. Troy Parra. That is to say, yeah, I'm doing absolutely very, very well. We're recording this the day after Troy Parra's legendary hat-trick away in Hungary, which has given us at least a chance of World Cup qualification for the first time in 24 years. Who knows if we'll actually get there or not, but let's just enjoy this wave as long as it lasts.
Yeah, 5 goals in 2 games is like unheard of for any Irish player since like the 90s.
Yeah, since
like
Robbie
even Robbie Keane wasn't getting like 5 goals in 2 games for Ireland. So yeah, crazy stuff. Unbelievably clutch. Yeah. So today we're covering Scarface. Shane, not that long ago, did a list of 12 Howard Hawks films you should watch. If you are a fan of Howard Hawks, you'll definitely know this one. It's one of his most famous films, for sure. It stars a guy called Paul Muni or Money. How would you pronounce it?
I would say Money, but yeah, maybe that's because I'm coming with the Irish spelling, which is Mooney. So
yeah, exactly. We're Irish. Mooney is an Irish surname spelled entirely differently to this. So
it could be Mooney.
Good old Paul plays the titular Scarface man because, again, this is based loosely on the Armitage Trail Scarface book. As far as I'm aware, the Al Pacino one is a bit more faithful to the source material. I'm not sure how true that is because I haven't read it yet. It's on the reading list, but have not read it yet. But as far as I know, this is fairly not the book. That being said, Ben Hecht, legendary screenwriter, came in, made a 60-page draft, changed this whole thing around because the two Howards, Howard Hawks and Howard Hughes, the producer, who weren't really good pals heading into this, decided to combine their superpowers and hop on that gangster train that was very much going in the early 30s, and they gave us Scarface. This film was so unbelievably controversial at the time, as in its PCA file, which if you don't know what a PCA file is, basically there was like in between like the censorship board and the film studios, there was like this middleman called the PCA, and they would recommend edits to a movie so that the movie would pass censorship. As far as I'm aware, Scarface 1932 has by far the largest PCA file of any film. It's like it's like a nearly 400-page document on how many rewrites and changes they were required to make for it to pass screening. So they did they just screened the film in states where there was no censorship. That's how they did it. They just said, no, we're not going to comply with any of your censorship laws. We're just going to make the film and we're going to screen it. I think there is a cut that ends with a different version. This isn't a massive spoiler to say because this isn't how the movie ends, so it's not really a spoiler. But there's a version where Tony meets a very different kind of like justice with the police and like goes through the whole system and like apologizes for his crimes and stuff. I think that version aired in New York, but I don't think it aired anywhere else. Everywhere else that it did screen, like the likes of New Orleans and I think Philadelphia, where censorship wasn't really a thing, they got this version. And without getting into spoiler-free reviews just yet, let me just say this version is pretty fiery. Shane, you had seen this film before, hadn't you?
I had, yeah.
Well, obviously for the list, but as well as prior probably. But heading into this, how excited were you to cover Scarface on the podcast?
Yeah, it really was, because I think it's probably Howard Hawks' first great film. I know he made like some good movies before that, a couple of which I mentioned on that video that you just mentioned. But I think this is one where I think this is like the first sign we get that Howard Hawks means business. Like he's going to be kind of one of the main guys around Hollywood. He's going to be one of the main directors, and around this kind of time period, 30s, 40s, 50s. Like you said, it's so violent, it's uncompromising in its violence. The film, not a spoiler, but the film does kind of lay all of its cards on the table in the first 15, 20 seconds, where it pretty much says, like, it's pretty much intended to be kind of a scream into the void about kind of the violence and stuff that was happening in America at the time, and basically like trying to get people to wake up and like not allow this to happen any longer. So yeah, it's very much kind of has an urgent feel as well to it, and it's a very angry film at times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Paul Muni as Tony Camonte is fantastic. I think that Boris Karloff, who actually is in The Criminal Code, which is the movie that Howard Hawks made before this, kind of dealing upon similar-ish themes about like justice and stuff like that. So it's a good movie as well. I'd actually recommend it. But he's really good in that, and he's also really good in this, albeit in a very brief role, not the most screen time he's ever had. So yeah, there's good performances throughout, and yeah, I just think it is entertaining, but it's more so it's so like uncompromising, like I said, in its depiction of violence and obviously of kind of organized crime and stuff. So it's definitely one of the more important and one of the best gangster movies that I've seen. That's not directed by obviously Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying as well, before we get into a spoiler for review, you can't really talk about 1932 Scarface without talking about Al Capone.
Yeah.
Two of the biggest things, of course, is the fabrications that Howard Hawks told about. First of all, that Al Capone sent him a machine gun as a present at Christmas one year because he loved this film so much, and also that after being found guilty in 1931, he tried to get a screening of this in prison. As far as I'm aware, neither of those two things are true, despite Howard Hawks telling everyone that. But what apparently is true is that whilst they were making this film, one day Ben Hecht went back to his hotel room, and two of Al Capone's henchmen were waiting for him in his hotel room and asked him if this was going to be an expose on Al Capone, and Hecht was like, no, and they were like, but the movie's literally called Scarface, and he was like, it's based on a book. So yeah, Ben Hecht did not get murdered, but again, not speaking of murder, but just again, I don't know why. Were we talking about Heat recently on the podcast, or were we just...
I know I watched it fairly recently, so maybe I mentioned it at that, like, at some stage recently.
Yeah, because obviously people talk about Heat having like real gunfire and like that shootout being iconic and everything. This is an early example of them also using real machine gun fire for the bullet sound effects, but as a result, Harold Lloyd, who most of you know as the guy dangling from the big clock in Safety Last, him and his brother visited set one day. His brother lost an eye because of a bullet fragment knocking off basically debris ending up in his eye. His brother was also called Gaylord Lloyd. Just thought I'd throw that in there too. But yeah, lost an eye on set of Scarface. So possibly a good thing that they maybe brought in some more laws and restrictions when it came to like having real guns on set, because you don't hear stories like that happening anymore, thankfully.
Well, there was that Alec Baldwin incident.
Yeah, there was Rust, but like, we'll not talk about Rust.
Let's leave that aside.
Yeah, hopefully that never happens again.
Yeah, exactly.
Time for a spoiler-free review.
Yeah, I think this is well worth the watch. I think that
it's actually it's Mooney. I've looked up. I've chat GPT'd Paul Muni pronunciation, and it's Moonee. So Mooney.
There you go. I think that Paul Mooney's performance in particular makes this kind of worth watching, because I think he's just relishing the fact that he's playing this dastardly kind of villain with basically no morals and no compulsions about killing his way to the top, basically, which is obviously a story that we've seen in many a gangster film before and since, but I think there's like an authenticity to his performance where You could tell like he's not necessarily the brightest guy from an intellectual standpoint, but I think he has street smarts and he knows how to use those street smarts to kind of outmaneuver his kind of, what would you call it, his people he is up against, for want of a better phrase.
Yeah.
So I think from that point of view, that's the main reason to watch. And I also think, yeah, like I said, it's an early example of Howard Hawks' brilliance behind the camera. Some of those shootout sequences are so impressive and so authentic. They feel so authentic, but they also feel so like in your face and so yeah, they feel like you're actually watching a shootout in real time, which isn't always the case, obviously, with shootout sequences like that, especially at this time period. Some of them could feel a bit, maybe not as authentic. So I think for those two reasons, yeah, absolutely would recommend this.
Yeah, I love this film. For those of you that don't know, I am very much working my way through this book. This is very much not sponsored, but I'm working my way through this Pre-Code Essentials book, which highlights 50 films, I want to say, between the years of 1930 and 1934, when the code was finally... It's gas because it's pre-code, but like the code was very much existing at this point. It was just they only started really enforcing it in 34, but we still call it pre-code anyway. But yeah, Scarface very much in that book. Loving pre-code era, and this is one of my favorite pre-code films that I've seen so far. Paul Muni is really, really great in this. He's an actor who I know at the time, kind of throughout the 30s, by the late 30s, really had a reputation as like a really good actor. That being said, I need to check out more of his films. I really, really liked Anne Dvorak as Cheska in this as well. The gangsters in this film, they're actually, some of them are quite intentionally funny. They're almost childlike. Like you can just tell they are loving going around shooting people with machine guns. They're almost giddy to do it. And her very bleak, very controlling, manipulative relationship, that being her being the victim with her brother, very much kind of holds a mirror up to his actions in a much more human way. Like you see him mow down a load of people with a Tommy gun who are also gangsters, and you're kind of like, this is class. And you get a massive chase sequence or someone piling through a lamppost or a bomb going up and him kind of scampering away with a smile on his face. But whenever you see his the scenes between Paul Muni and Anne Dvorak, I think that really highlights that like he is a dastardly man who you could argue has the best intentions for his sister, but certainly does not go about it the best way at all, especially towards the end. Also worth noting, this is just through my own research. I haven't seen this trivia fact anywhere, so this might be the first time. It's definitely not the first time anyone's picked up on this. But Johnny Lovo in this film, who is the gangster who...
I know.
It's not Tony Montana, it's Tony Camonte.
Yeah, I think I know what you're going to say.
So his name, the actor's name, is Osgood Perkins.
Yeah.
And his mother's maiden name is Anthony.
No way.
Anthony Perkins. Anthony and Osgood Perkins. Yes, they existed before. I know that's such a tenuous link, but still. I clicked on Osgood Perkins, the 1930s one, not the current one, and then saw his like family tree, and it was like his mother's name was something Anthony, and I was like, hang on, Anthony and Perkins made Osgood Perkins? That's crazy. Anyway, he's very good in this too, and we're shouting out Karen Morley, who plays Poppy, who is Lovo's partner, and without getting into too many spoilers, I think Tony Camonte might fancy her. And as well, personally, I fucking love Vince Barnett's performance as Angelo, who is the comedic relief gangster, who is like genuinely actually really funny. He has some really funny scenes. There's like a scene where a cafe just gets like shot to bits, and he is like on the phone to someone in the phone booth, and he keeps trying to hear what they're saying, but the person on the phone is who is setting him up to try and get it. Well, not him. They're trying to set Tony up, but he answers the phone. They're trying to keep him on the phone, and like he's just buying it. He's like, yeah, what? But they are shooting him, and they shoot through his hat and everything, but he's determined to find out who it is, because he has this whole arc. Even though he cannot read or write, he is Tony's secretary, which again, amazing gag. But the whole thing is every time he answers the phone for Tony, he then doesn't take any names or details or anything. So he's literally the worst secretary in the world. So throughout this film, Angelo has his own quest. He is gonna remember to get someone's name after a phone call. It's just an amazing side plot. It's so small but so fantastic, and it actually gets such an amazing payoff as well. But yeah, shout out to Vince Barnett, who plays Angelo, who, as far as I'm aware, we have never covered on the podcast before. He has been in some pretty big films. He was in All Quiet on the Western Front, The Killers, Brute Force, and some of the Marx Brothers films, to name a few. But yeah, shout out Angelo. Potentially my favorite side gangster in the whole film. And Karloff, obviously, shout out Karloff. He's not in this a lot, but like he's just so class. He's literally Boris Karloff. Like he's just class. Yeah. But speaking of opinions, of an interesting one for you all today, because it is time for the Times Machine. And yes, it is time for the Times Machine, but this is not a review by Bosley Crowther. This is a review by a bit of a legendary guy in his own right, Mordaunt Hall, who was the first ever full-time film reviewer for the New York Times. He started in the 20s and was there for over 10 years, but a bit of an icon when it comes to like film journalism, I suppose, because, you know, well, what can I say? He was one of the first to do it. He's a pioneer. That being said, Shane, I'll give you a tiny bit of background. Mordaunt Hall wasn't necessarily, he wouldn't like break down films based on their structure or whatever. He was more like into the, he was more someone who kind of like this podcast. He was more about like having a chat about a film rather than like getting into the nooks and crannies of it all. That being said, Shane, do you reckon that Mordaunt Hall liked 1932's Scarface, considering how controversial the film was?
Yeah, I think he probably did. Like I said, I think Howard Hawks was starting to get a bit of a reputation at this point. I think the film has a message and like a clear goal to achieve, which is to kind of get people to wake up a little bit, and I think that would have like obviously resonated with people of a certain kind of background and stuff. And yeah, I think there's enough in there from an acting point of view and just a narrative point of view, really. So yeah, I'm going to say he liked it.
As I said, he's a bit more of a chatty guy, so I don't know if we're going to get the hard-hitting analysis in the opening and closing paragraphs as we would with our good friend Bosley Crowther, but here we go. Now, this was the original title of the film, and this actually also confirms, so this is going to be a spoiler in its own right, because this confirms that this had the different ending in New York, because he says, "The slaughter in Scarface, the shame of a nation," which is what it was originally called. The Howard Hughes gangster production, which was launched yesterday at the Rialto, is like that of a Shakespearean tragedy, for after the smoke, machine guns and pineapple bombs has blown away, the leading killer has gone to his death on the gallows. Different ending. The only one of a group of principal characters left is a blonde with carefully plucked eyebrows, she who had been the mistress of two underworld giants. C. Henry Gordon and Edward Maxwell acquit themselves with the distinction as the police officials. George Raft is a saturine as Ronaldo, who is in the habit of either tossing coins or cutting out paper dolls when he talks. Mr. Perkins makes a thoroughly forbidding Lovo. Mr. Dvorak is Abel as Tony's sister. Karen Morley as Poppy is very careful about her personal appearance, especially with the curve of her eyebrows. She gives a thorough and credible performance. Boris Karloff appears as a rival gangster, but his British accent is hardly sustainable to the role. Random criticism. But the picture is dominated by Mr. Muni's virile and vehement acting. As far as I'm aware, he's a pretty big fan of that film. He went into a lot of detail talking about the plot, like a lot. But yeah, seems like he liked it. Seems like he liked everyone's performances, and he only didn't like Boris Karloff's English accent. Which, come on, man, what's wrong with how could you possibly single out Boris Karloff in this film as a negative?
I'm not even sure, was he doing that much of an accent? I didn't really pick up on that.
He was just talking in his own accent.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. Anyway, that was the Times Machine. now it is time for the main event. It is time to talk about Scarface 1932 with all the spoilers that you could possibly imagine. Shane, Scarface 1932, or Scarface, The Shame of a Nation, or whatever it is you want to call it. Scarface, the Paul Muni one. What's it all about?
Yeah, so it follows a guy called Paul Muni, as we've established, who wants to basically climb up the ladder very, very quickly in the underworld. And so the film opens with him shooting his boss Louis dead, and he does this like whistle, which kind of recurs throughout the film, which is pretty cool. It's kind of like, if you've ever seen The Wire, Omar Little does something similar. It's like it's like a calling card. So I think it's pretty funny how it kind of obviously tracks him throughout the film. But yeah, like he's interrogated by police about it because they basically know he did it. They just can't prove it, and he just plays it completely straight and he's completely unflustered and stuff. And this is obviously the first time we get that he's very ambitious and he's not going to wait around for his chance. And in the meantime, he's kind of teamed up with Johnny Lovo, like you said. So Johnny Lovo kind of takes over as the new boss, and he's kind of giving out orders and stuff. But I think you can tell pretty quickly that this isn't going to track. This isn't going to last too long from Tony's point of view. And in the meantime, like you said, he's kind of being very possessive and controlling of his sister, Francesca, and he's very dismissive as well of his mother, which is again an interesting wrinkle, because I think, not to stereotype, but I think in a lot of like depictions of Italian American families, like they're very, very reverential towards their parents, especially the mother. So it's interesting that this is like an example which is intended to obviously show you that Tony's a bit of a bastard, like that he's speaks to his mother in the way he does, and he's very he's very kind of aggressive towards her in his kind of body language and in his mannerisms and stuff. So yeah, it's obviously like a very early sign that I think if you were rooting for this guy, if you thought he was entertaining, like maybe you shouldn't.
Worth noting, so the lads, Lovo and Tony Camonte, played by Paul Muni, they're south side.
Yeah.
Tony really wants to get into the north side. He thinks that they should be taking over all of Chicago, which is where this is set. And he has his own sidekick, Ronaldo, played by George Raft, who kind of hilariously grew up in a slum in New York that like a lot of famous gangsters came from. But and it is like his first major credit. But after this film, a lot of the gangsters from his block would come up to him and like ask them for like opinions on how they should like do business, because he obviously convinced them all so much that he was playing a gangster pretty well, Ronaldo. Worth noting, Ronaldo is in the Manny role. So yeah, even though we're already talking spoilers, if you know anything about Manny in the Al Pacino one, you know what's gonna happen to poor Ronaldo. But
he's in Some Like It Hot.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that
George Raft is in Some Like It Hot as well.
He is, isn't he? Yeah, he's a very familiar face.
Yeah, he's in a bunch of stuff.
I have to say,
he's in a bunch of stuff.
But yeah, Ronaldo, the sidekick of Tony, very much fancies Tony's sister, Cheska, played by Anne Dvorak. We'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, basically the main premise of this film is Tony keeps undermining Lovo, trying to get into the north side. Lovo, is he all bark or does he have bite? And also then we actually never see their rival on the north side, who Tony is so hell-bent on messing up. His name is O'Hara. But we do get Boris Karloff's character, who after, we're getting into spoilers. After O'Hara gets killed in a drive-by Tony and the boys, Boris Karloff effectively becomes the main guy from the north side. He's called Gaffney, and Gaffney has a trick up his sleeve. We've already kind of talked about them once before, and that is he has Tommy guns. And boy, when this film introduces Tommy guns in particular, does it get increasingly violent. Yep. The drive-bys are crazy. I feel like the pacing of this film is amazing anyway, but like I feel like it really goes into like another gear when Gaffney opens up that the fruit crate with the machine gun in it. and he literally like introduces the machine gun to the movie. So good. But yeah, that is kind of the basic premise of the film. And I think first and foremost, I want to talk about Paul Mooney's performance. He is so good in this. He very much laid the foundation of what it is to be a gangster on film. With like previous films, I know The Public Enemy and Little Caesar came out the year prior.
Yeah.
This literally like began filming weeks after they came out. I feel like Edward G. Robinson in Little Caesar is he's almost more like a Joe Pesci kind of character. He's like, don't mess with me or I'll mess with you. Whereas this is the power hungry, trigger happy, almost like a child who's been spoiled with, in this case, machine guns kind of gangster who we see in so many gangster films since. And I think Paul Mooney is exceptional in this film. He's got so many good lines as well, but like there's one that like is inherently obviously an inspiration for Johnny Tightlips in The Simpsons, where early on in the film he gets called into questioning and he says, I don't see nothing, I don't do nothing, I don't say nothing, especially around the police. I don't talk to any of you, or something along those lines. But when I was watching that, I just could imagine Johnny Tightlips in that same situation. Shout out to Johnny Tightlips, one of my favorite Simpsons characters.
Nice. Yeah, there's a great scene as well with where Johnny, tries to basically double cross Tony, but Tony realizes, and then he basically sets Johnny up where he gets someone to call the office and.
It is unbelievable.
Because you know what's going to happen before it happens, so he gets someone to call, and obviously Tony knows who's on the line, but then he tries to pass it off like it's some kind of crank call or something. So because he wants to like obviously kind of finagle his way out of the situation. So that's proof, like obviously that he tried to set him up. So poor Johnny isn't long for the world after that. There's also a great scene outside the like a theater where a bunch of them have gone to see this play, and like in the middle at the intermission, at the intermission,
I love Angelo. He's such a class character.
At the intermission, they kind of find out that that I think is it Gaffney and some of his guys are.
Yeah, they find out that Gaffney and his fellas are all at a bowling alley.
So they basically obviously kind of suit up, as it were. But then he says, I think he says to Angelo, isn't it? He says, "Stay here. Tell me what happens at the end, because I want to find out what happens at the end here." It's so great.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Nah, so good. Angelo's whole arc in this film is amazing. He's like this, he's sort of a dimwitted gangster in the background, but like early on, he lets his allegiances to Tony be known in front of Lovo and in front of all the other gangsters. Early on in the film, Tony goes on a spree of like killing off people and bombing places and forcing people to buy their stuff, their beer. And like, you can tell that Ronaldo and Angelo are like the two heavies who are there for him. But then as well, where Ronaldo's like clearly Tony's bodyguard, Angelo is his secretary, and there's like multiple occasions where Angelo picks up the phone. He gets like really angry at one guy as well and puts the phone down on him. And he's like, "Did you get a name?" And he's like, No. And then he like takes his gun out and he goes to like shoot the phone. He's so pissed off with the guy. It's so funny. But yeah, Angelo's character arc is amazing because we get that cafe scene where a drive-by by Gaffney and his guys is ordered, and they riddle this cafe with bullets, absolutely riddle it. Everyone's ducking for cover, but the way they set it up is that they call for Tony on the phone, which has no protection. So whenever Tony is supposed to go to the phone, he sends Angelo because he's his secretary, and he just wants Angelo to just finally get someone's name right on the phone. So he picks up the phone. Machine gun riddle everywhere, and there's he stood behind like a, I don't know, is it like a water cooler or something that like starts spraying water on him whilst his hat gets riddled with bullets whilst he's trying to get the guy's name. But at the end of the film, big climactic shootout. And I feel like a lot of films that we've covered on this maybe don't necessarily tie up the smaller characters' arcs very well. I feel like that's it. I feel like a character of Angelo's level in a lot of the films that we've covered, maybe the film noirs or whatever, they don't get like a full blown arc. But no, Angelo is like the last guy standing alongside Tony when they are getting shot at by the police when they first get to the house. He takes bullets in the back through the door. He goes upstairs. The phone starts ringing. It's Poppy, and he answers the phone, and he just goes, "It's Poppy. It's for you." And he puts the phone up, and then he falls and dies. But my God, did Angelo stick to the plan? He got someone's name right in the end. So shout out to Angelo for being a fantastic side character in this film. Ronaldo, as I said, is in the Manny role. So yeah, Shane, if anyone has seen the Al Pacino Scarface, they know exactly what happens to poor Ronaldo.
Yeah, so obviously he and Ronaldo and Francesca have obviously been seeing each other, and Tony is not happy at all when he finds this out, because he had been trying to kind of keep her away from the life, as it were, throughout the film. Obviously, in like,
I think it's more so. I don't think he's trying to keep her away from the life. I think he's just possessive over men
in general,
in her life, because there's like a guy who dances with her at a ball, and Tony just beats the shit out of him.
There is a weird kind of dynamic going on. Yeah, I do think maybe that part of it is, well, maybe I've seen it a couple times now, and each time I have kind of, maybe he doesn't want her getting with someone from his world, as it were. But look, yeah, maybe I could be wrong about that. But either way, yeah, he realizes that she's with Ronaldo when he goes to her apartment, and obviously, yeah, then he kills Ronaldo just mercilessly. Doesn't even think about it. Doesn't even
just guns him down,
and it doesn't even seem to affect him that much either. And obviously Francesca is distraught, and then she starts to point a gun, and it looks like she's gonna kill Tony, but she doesn't pull the trigger. And then she herself becomes another victim of Tony's, albeit kind of caught in the crossfire, because when there's a massive police kind of cordon outside and they realise he's up there and they start hailing bullets at this apartment, she's the one kind of caught, like I said, caught in the crossfire, and she dies. And then just an amazing ending then where they're trying to smoke him out with gas, and so obviously he is going downstairs and kind of coughing, obviously, and coughing, and then he's trying to like plead for his life. He's trying to kind of say don't shoot, but he is shot. It's pretty interesting that he is kind of portrayed as very cowardly at the end, because I think that's very much Hawks and Ben Hecht and stuff. Because if, like, as often tends to happen with gangsters, you do kind of not root for them, but you do kind of maybe admire the fact that they're willing to do what it takes. Like in a way that you probably shouldn't, but again, there's a reason why gangster movies have been so successful for 100 years. Whereas I think the fact that they do show him being so cowardly and so kind of unsympathetic towards the end, is very much a deliberate and an artistic choice, obviously, to again just hammer home the message that the film has been trying to say since the start, which is these are not good people and we need to do something about what they are doing to our communities and stuff. So yeah, very much.
Yeah, because the film very much opens with sort of a public announcement of like, your government allows these gun crimes to happen. What should your government do? But also, what should you do to kind of take action? So very much a ongoing theme in this film. Worth noting as well, the unbelievably iconic "The world is yours" sign from outside his window. One of the best early Hollywood pieces of like movie iconography I can think of. Like one of the early examples of just an unbelievable visual. Like there's a reason that it's been done over so many times in Scarface and La Haine, amongst other things. Like it's just such an iconic shot that they go back to at the end as well. He kind of sees the sign as everything's kind of crumbling around him. Worth noting as well, when he guns down Manny, this obviously would have been a massive deal for like audiences at the time in particular. She says that they had just gotten married, so like this kind of crazy affair that they were having was not a crazy affair. They were very much married, which, you know, back then in particular was like, no, they were set for life, they were in love, they were always going to be together, that type of thing. So for Tony to do this, it would be even more despicable than if they were just like having a fling for 1930s audiences. But yeah, at the end, she has this whole monologue where she says, "I'm you, you're me," and it's always been that way. So like, you do kind of have that real sort of sibling bond at the end, where she then picks up a machine gun too, and the two of them are just rattling bullets at the police through the window. But yeah, as you said, one stray bullet takes her out while she's in the crossfire of a gunfight she shouldn't have been in the first place. But her brother ended up getting her involved in that. Worth noting as well, this movie is like, besides Angelo, this movie is really funny for a gangster movie. It's not as bleak and as dark as you'd think. Howard Hawks is the director. Ben Hecht wrote the script, so there's gonna be layers to this film. But there's so many things. Like, an early example is Tony, when they decide that they're going to expand in the south side after he's killed his boss. He's like, "Don't worry, boss, I'm an excellent salesman." And then it just cuts to him punching some guy behind the counter, being like, "Buy our liquor." It's so great. It's just really funny smash cut. There's a few other things as well. I feel like Tony himself has a few great one-liners in this film, but genuinely very funny film. Besides Angelo, who is hilarious to me. He is kind of the main comic relief, but there is other elements of this film that are really funny too. I think it's a really well-rounded gangster film, especially for 1932.
Yeah, totally agree.
Is there any other performances that you'd want to highlight? Actually, shout out Boris Karloff. I feel like we haven't talked about Boris Karloff at all, and after the New York Times dunked on him for having an English accent, I'd like to seek justice for my boy Boris.
Yeah, no,
anything kind to say about Boris Karloff as Gaffney?
Yeah, he does a good job. Like, he does what you want him to do, which is kind of be an effective foil for Tony, obviously. It did strike me that he kind of looks like Jeremy Irons in this movie, that I've never really seen before from Boris Karloff.
I have seen that. I personally made that connection myself before in, I want to say, The Body Snatcher.
Yeah.
It looks a bit like Jeremy Irons.
It's so weird. Like, I don't think I'd ever really put that together before, but in this movie in particular, he does just look like Jeremy Irons. It's so weird.
Shout out Boris Karloff. He's not in this nearly enough. I think, as the story goes, Howard Hawks was very much like going around scouting for talent. Like, he was picking up the main actors from like stage plays and shows. I think he met C. Henry Gordon, who plays the inspector. I think he like literally met him at like a boxing match, but like the rest of them, he met all of them like when they were doing like on stage performances, except for Boris Karloff, who had worked with him prior, obviously, who just really wanted to be in another Howard Hawks movie, and basically just like flat out asked Howard Hawks if he could be in his next movie, and Howard Hawks was like, "Yeah, of course, I'll figure out a role for you." Thank God, because I feel like it's actually a pretty minor role, yet you see Boris Karloff's name floated around as being in this film.
Well, he is in the criminal
quite
code
a bit,
as well.
because although he doesn't get,
he is in the criminal code.
Yeah.
I think like, that's a meatier role, and that's actually a really good role. But yeah, sorry to cut across it. But yeah, he is in that. So they had like worked together like prior to this,
I just think he definitely provides a bit of substance to an otherwise kind of smaller role, because although he is technically the opposition, the real opposition to Tony is Lovo, his own boss, who he's trying to usurp. And yeah, that whole phone sequence is just unbelievably good. Like, it's so good. But yeah, I reckon we get into a bit of a spoilery review. And when I say a spoiler review, I mean literally. Shane, what are your thoughts on the movie Scarface from 1932?
Yeah, I really recommend it. I think it's one of the early examples of kind of what could be done with the gangster genre, because yeah, it does have a message, but it's also just an entertaining kind of film. And like, yeah, there's going to be people again who don't appreciate the fact that it is entertaining. They just want it to be like they want the villains to get their comeuppance, and that is what happens at the end. But like I said, there's a reason why gangster movies have kind of been so successful for 100 years. It's because on some level, I think we kind of appreciate the fact that not appreciate maybe, but we're kind of drawn to the fact that these people are kind of morally corrupt and stuff, and like there's a lot to be done from a dramatic point of view with characters like that, as Tony Camonte proves in this movie. Yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars on both occasions actually. So I really, really liked it, and like I said, I think it's the first example. Even though I like Criminal Code and I like a couple of his other films pre this. I think this is his first kind of film that you can argue is really, really good slash great. And yeah, like I said, it's the first kind of example or the first kind of maybe inkling that he would go on to be kind of one of the great directors of his time.
Yeah, I agree. I honestly think this is one of my favorite films of the 30s. I love this film. I think it's amazing. Worth noting as well, the whole American dream of it
Yeah,
all. Big sort of theme in this kind of era's literature and prose and whatever, because, you know, the Great Depression and everything. So the idea of the American dream was really something that people were kind of clinging on to for hope. So worth noting that as well. That's very much present in this. The guy who takes himself from, a bodyguard to like basically the number one guy in Chicago for a fleeting moment. Love this film. Love Paul Muni's performance in this. I think it's one of the best lead gangster performances ever. I think it's got a lot to offer in such a short space of time. I think this is like paced incredibly. You will not be bored for a second watching this film, whether you're watching machine gun fire or humor or just a really uncomfortable sibling relationship unfolding or anything else, or Tony trying to steal Poppy, who I feel like we haven't really talked enough about. She was good in that film too, to be fair to her. But Tony basically spends the whole film trying to steal her from Lovo, as well as like everything else that Lovo has. He's very much trying to ruin Lovo's life from under him, and he achieves that. And very interesting for a film pre-code, but when the code's really starting to like become a thing with regards to like the PCA and the Hays Code Authority are like really trying to like clamp down on movies. As a result, this film, like box office wise, didn't do very well. I think that's just because it didn't screen in nearly as many cinemas as it should have because of censorship. So it's not like it wasn't like it was a flop. I feel like where it was shown, it was huge. It just wasn't shown everywhere because of censorship. So it's not like a massive flop or anything. The legacy that it has is iconic as well, of course. Really want to go ahead and read the book too. And yeah, one of my absolute favorite films of the 30s, like genuinely probably top 5. And the 30s is like slowly but surely becoming one of my favorite decades in cinema, just because of how experimental it was, especially pre-code. They were doing some mad stuff. But yeah, I gave it 4.5 stars. Absolutely love this film. One of the greatest gangster films of all time. One of the greatest gangsters of all time in cinema. Definitely not Al Capone. But yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. And I reckon we get into a little old segment now before we wrap things up, where we talk about what we have watched recently.
Yeah, so first off, I watched kind of a western, kind of a light-hearted western starring Jimmy Stewart and Marlene Dietrich. Destry Rides Again. So Jimmy Stewart plays like this pacifist who doesn't believe in guns and owning guns and shooting guns, which kind of makes him he becomes the town deputy sheriff, and his dad was this like legendary sheriff in a different town in America, but yeah, he doesn't really believe in that stuff, so he kind of becomes the town kind of joke, if you will. But yeah, he's a lot more intelligent than maybe he's given credit for, and yeah, you can kind of know what the way the movie's going to go from there. But anyway, yeah, it's pretty fun stuff. Frankenstein from Guillermo del Toro. I'm sorry to say I did not like this. Really expected to. I really like Guillermo del Toro, but I really like Jacob Elordi's performance as the creature. But that's about all I liked in it. I've seen people praising the cinematography, which, yeah, some of it does look great, especially the kind of snow sequences, but I think a lot of it just looks very digital. Do you know that Netflix look where it just looks too shiny?
Yeah, I feel... that's the thing. I really do want to watch this because I really like Jacob Elordi. Yeah. I like listening to his interviews and stuff. I have a lot of time for him as a person. He's clearly someone who really cares about the craft. And I want to watch his good performance, but like everything I've seen is just, this is like a Netflix movie, and that is like,
it is
not. I'm not gonna say it's like part of the reason why I love watching old films, but like genuinely, if Netflix put out a new movie, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I'm watching something from the 50s tonight.
Yeah.
Like, I just, yeah, the whole Netflixification of movies is something that I just,
Like I try to keep up with new
it's a
releases.
brain rot.
You know, like I do try to keep up with new releases when I can.
Yeah.
And look, it's a Guillermo del Toro film, so I'm gonna watch it. Like, I'm gonna see what it's about.
Of course.
And especially since it is a passion project of his for a long time. Like he's wanted to make this for a long time. I think part of the problem from me as well is that first of all, it's too long. It's 2.5 hours, which to me, you know, I love a long film, but like there's a way to do it because he had conceived of this initially as two films, as one film from the point of view of Victor Frankenstein and then another film from the creature's point of view. But obviously he, for whatever reason, decided to merge them together, and you do kind of feel like it is just oddly paced. Like it is like it is right half the film and then jumps to the second half from a different perspective, which is fair enough, but I feel like it's just not paced well enough at all. So yeah, for me, it was a disappointment, I'm sorry to say. The Kid Detective is starring Adam Brody from a few years ago. It's like a murder mystery. So he's this private detective, but he was like this kind of kid whiz when it comes to like solving crimes in his local community, and got this like great reputation, and like everyone in his town loved him. But then something really bad happens, which I won't spoil, because it is like the inciting incident, which. Yeah, something really bad happens, and then however long later, let's call it 20 years later, he's still in the town, but he's very much like being a kind of he's now officially a PI, but he doesn't really have that much work coming in. If he does, it's like, right, where's someone stole my cat, or my partner's having an affair, so find out who's, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's lowball stuff. But then one day a girl comes into his office and her boyfriend has been murdered, and she asks him to find out what happened and who did it and stuff. And then from there, yeah, it's very funny film, and it's very funny, but it's also very dark at times, especially the ending, which again I won't spoil, but I would definitely recommend this if you're a fan of that kind of mystery, kind of detective or crime solving genre, because I think it punches above its weight from that point of view. It's better than I expected it to be. Avatar, I've never gotten on with Avatar. I've seen it like twice in full, and I tried to start it a couple of other times and couldn't finish it. For whatever reason, I just tried it again, and I actually really liked it this time. I don't know why. It just clicked for me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it just clicked for me. I don't know why. It's still like, wouldn't say I absolutely love it, but I definitely like it. I appreciate it more from a story point of view, and like visually it is beautiful to look at, and it's very inventive. And obviously it's James Cameron, kind of he's one of the best out there, like world building and stuff. So yeah, I'm happy to say I appreciate that more. And then I did watch the second one as well, which, funny story, I bought tickets for that twice, couldn't go and see either. Like last minute something came up on both occasions, so I couldn't go on either occasion, so never actually saw The Way of Water. But obviously I've seen it now, and I actually did prefer it to the first one. It is a step up in my opinion, so yeah, I'm looking forward to the new one, Fire and Ash, so we'll see how that goes. Now You See Me and Now You See Me Too. So I'd seen the first one. I remember like enjoying it to an extent, but then I remember the twist at the end just really pissed me off how stupid it was.
Yeah, I don't want to be like, I find their movies so corny.
They're
if there's like a
cringe.
franchise, if there's a franchise that I just don't really get on with, it's the Now You See Me films. I just find them so corny.
You're right. It absolutely is corny and stuff, and it did stop me from rewatching it. But like I saw the new one was out, so I was like, look, I'll give it another go and see how I like it. It's less, once you know what the twist is, it's far less like annoying. But then, but then the second film, right? So it's if you like the first one, like, or if you get on with the first one, you'll get on with it. If you don't like the first one, you probably won't get on with it. It's one of those, like, you kind of know what the story is. But I will say the twist at the end of the second one is even stupider than the twist in the first one. So look, I was really pissed off, but I did see the new one then. Now You See Me, Now You Don't. Again, it's more the same. I don't know why I expected much more. Or maybe I didn't really, but like, it's fine. Like, I enjoy them in the moment, but in a week's time I won't forget a single thing about the film. So you know, like, I recommend it if you like the franchise, but if you don't, then like, don't go out of your way to watch it, because you're not gonna get anything new really. Edgar Wright, The Running Man, that's obviously his new movie. Mixed, very much mixed on it. I think it's it just doesn't have this kind of the visual panache and flair and stuff that Edgar Wright, like his films are edited so well. I think part of that is that he really loves his material. He obviously writes all his material. Like he obviously did co-write this, but it was very much a project brought to him to see if he wanted to do it, as opposed to something he really wanted to do. Because I'm such a big fan of his. Hot Fuzz, Scott Pilgrim, the Shaun of the Dead, obviously, Baby Driver, like so many movies of his that are so amazing, but they all came from his amazing brain. And he manages to kind of balance kind of action and comedy and humor and like genuine stakes really, really well. This is fine. I think Coleman Domingo for me is the standout. He's really, really funny as the
such a good actor.
Yeah, he's a great actor. He's very funny and he's clearly relishing this role as this game show host. Glenn Powell's fine, but again, I don't like if you're going to call a film The Running Man. Like I know it's not meant to be taken literally. It's meant to be he's meant to be on the run, which I get, but I kind of feel like you should have at least one or two extended set piece like sequences where it's like he's running for his life. He doesn't really run that much. It's so weird. It's fine. Like I think the movie is fine. I think the ending falls flat and it's a bit of a mess, to be honest, but it's fine. If you like Edgar Wright, go check it out and you'll probably enjoy it to an extent at least. What else? And yeah, that's actually it. Yeah, a couple of limited series in there, but I won't mention those because they're actually pretty good. But yeah, check out my letterbox if you want to see what they are.
I haven't watched many, but again, often I haven't watched many, but what I have watched I would like to talk about. First and foremost, Shane, I'm going to start with an apology to one Robert Montgomery, because if you cast your mind all the way back to the Golden Hour Film Podcast episode 3, when we talked about how shite Mr. and Mrs. Smith was, I do believe we questioned everyone involved in that film. I watched a film from 1930 called The Divorcee. It's the first film in that book that I showed you all earlier. And I think it's very much in the book for two reasons. One, Norma Shearer won Best Actress at the Academy Awards that year for her lead performance in it. And she is very good. She's kind of saddled with like most of the dialogue in the film. Like she's got a few monologues and stuff. But Robert Montgomery, who was Mr. Smith, is by far the best thing in this movie. He is absolutely hilarious in this movie. Genuinely really funny. It is film. I'm really mixed on this film because you have to take it with a pinch of salt. It came out in 1930. It starts off and it feels like it's actually going to be a genuinely kind of ahead of its time, groundbreaking, feminist sort of film about a divorced couple. It shows them falling in love and then their divorce early on in the film, and after he cheats on her, and you think that it's going to be this like empowering feminist thing, and then it kind of just like crumbles under the pressure, and she, for what, like, not to, it's a spoiler, but like, you know, if you haven't seen The Divorcee and you want to skip ahead to my next movie, maybe skip ahead like 30 seconds. But she goes back to him for like literally no reason at all, which was pretty disappointing in the end. But the funny thing is she also, after finding out that he had cheated on her, she then drunkenly goes out and sleeps with a man to kind of even the odds, and she sleeps with Robert Montgomery's character, who is just like the biggest wuss ever, and like is the husband's best friend. So like the husband's like, oh, whenever I found out whoever she slept with, I will kill them. And Robert Montgomery's character is like, oh yeah, no, I'd do the exact same thing. And then like in the next scene, you just see him like at the airport, and he's just like, he literally like, he hightails it out of there, and he spends the whole time then like in his robes and on a nice comfortable chair, just like on the phone being like, is he still mad? Can I come home yet? He's very funny. Would I recommend the film? Probably not. Unless you want to like go through all the best actress wins at the Oscars, but like that would be like nearly 100 films. I then watched The Woman in the Window, which is you want to talk about a film with a stupid twist ending. I know, as far as I'm aware, this is based on like a really famous book.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think the movie came after the book. I think it did. And I know everyone loves the book anyway, and I know the book has a massive twist ending. I found the twist ending of this film so stupid. It is a Fritz Lang film with Edward G. Robinson, Joan Bennett, and Dan Durya. I will be saying that again very shortly. This is definitely the inferior of the two. Edward G. Robinson is definitely the best part of this film. I feel like Fritz Lang's kind of on autopilot in this. It's a good film noir. It's an enjoyable film noir. If you're a film noir fan, I'd recommend it. It's also kind of interesting because I was really hooked up until the twist ending, which I do feel kind of falls flat in its face. But I would definitely recommend it. But it was kind of interesting. For the first half of this film, there is no antagonist. And I was kind of like, oh, that's kind of it's atypical of a film noir to not have like a central antagonist for like the majority of the film. Dan Durya does show up, and if you're not familiar with Dan Durya, I would highly recommend you seek out his work. He was a very, very underrated actor of that time. But yeah, this not necessarily my favorite film noir that I watched. As a matter of fact, I watched a better film noir, directed by Fritz Lang, starring Edward G. Robinson, Joan Bennett, and Dan Durya, called Scarlet Street. Yes, the exact same team reunited and made a definitely better film. That being said, was I a little disappointed? Kind of. I feel like the second act of this film just dissolves, totally dissolves. You have like a killer first act where Edward G. Robinson's character is like the nicest guy on earth, but you know, it's similar to like 7 Year Itch. He's kind of like, he hears of like people. Oh no, hang on, that's Woman in the Window. What am I talking about? That's the wrong one. Why, they actually have both got very similar premises, actually, these two films. So it's kind of understandable that I'm getting them mixed up. Anyway, Edward G. Robinson's character is kind of lonely. His wife is horrible to him, and he meets Joan Bennett's character. Where have we heard that before? Actually, she wasn't horrible to him in the window. Anyway, this is a film noir about counterfeit art and affairs and people coming back from the dead. It's kind of mad. But Dan Durya is definitely the standout in this for me. He's such a great sleazy villain. Just such a punchable face. And his voice as well. He's so good at getting under your skin. He's so easy to hate. We have covered him before on the podcast as he is potentially going to win a Golden Hour Film Podcast Award this year, as he was won Duke Pastrami in Ball of Fire. He was one half of Asma and Pastrami in Ball of Fire. So, you know, potential Golden Hour Film Podcast Award for Dan Durya. But yeah, like he plays a villain in Winchester 73, which he's very good in. He's in Ministry of Fear, which he's very good in. Shout out Dan Durya for being a really underrated villain of that time, because he is definitely my favorite part of Scarlet Street. That being said, the last act is like so good. Unlike Woman in the Window, this has like a really dark killer ending. Very Fritz Lang coded. I then watched probably my favorite first watch film noir that I'm going to talk about. Definitely my favorite first watch film noir that I'm going to talk about in this video. That is 99 River Street. Really, really good film noir directed by Phil Carlson, starring John Payne and Evelyn Keyes. It's so good. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm just going to tell you to go out of your way and watch it. John Payne, who most of you would know as the male love interest in the OG Miracle on 34th Street, the guy who's like really sound neighbor. That's John Payne. He is so good in this. This is such a great dark film noir. Again, I like that when film noirs have their own kind of edge to them. This one is a film noir, but John Payne's character was a heavyweight boxer and like fought for a world title. So like in scenarios where gangsters are like trying to pin down this cab driver and think that they have him, he just beats the bollocks out of them in every time. It's so funny to see, because normally you see like a guy like get a gun to the head and he like falls over and he's kidnapped easily. Nah, this cab driver Ernie Driscoll, he just batters every henchman, but beats them within an inch of their life. Because he had to retire from boxing because of an eye injury, so there was no physical ailment or anything. So he is as fit as a fiddle. But yeah, really, really enjoyable film noir. 99 River Street. I would absolutely recommend it. It's the film of all the ones I've talked about that I would recommend the most. I then watched Actually, if you want to talk about a film that like I would recommend to everyone, it is a 6-minute short film by a guy called Tim Burton back when he was inspired, called Vincent. If any of you have not seen that Tim Burton short film Vincent, it is 6 minutes long. It's on YouTube. It's about a boy who wishes that he was Vincent Price. It came out in 1982. It's animated stop motion. It is like peak. It is peak Tim Burton. It's so good. It's like it's if you have 6 minutes to spare after the podcast, go watch that short film, Vincent. You will thank me. It is just such an unbelievable short film. And then last but not least, I watched a not so short film. I watched a silent film by the name of Destiny by Fritz Lang. And yeah, interesting. A film that revolves around a woman going on, or a woman being shown 3 different stories that all intentionally have very similar plots, would you believe, is kind of repetitive. That being said, kind of reminded me a bit of like the 1911 Dante's Inferno. I was really caught off guard with like just how far they went with the visual effects. They really went for it. Like, this came out in the 20s. They really went for the visual effects, which I have to commend. Visually, it's really great. I think the 3rd story that she's shown is my favorite. And yeah, I definitely, as it stands, my favorite Fritz Lang film is still definitely Metropolis. But if you haven't seen that short video that I made where I got all those Fritz Lang movies, I still have plenty to get through. Especially Dr. Maybe the Gambler. That's probably next on the hit list.
I need to watch that.
Really need to get through that, but might treat myself to that once I get all my assignments done. But yeah, Destiny is a silent film that if you are into silent films, I'd recommend it. And if you're into Fritz Lang, I'd recommend it. It's probably a bit overly long and a bit repetitive for me because, you know, we are basically seeing the same thing happen 3 times. Well, technically 4 times, but yeah, look, it's Destiny, it's Fritz Lang, it's a very famous silent film for a reason, and I think the visual effects are probably my favorite part of the entire film. Yeah, there's some real fun stuff in that third story, but yeah, that was everything I watched recently.
Nice.
And that was the episode of the Golden Hour Film Podcast where we covered 1932's Scarface. Next week, he's so cool, Robert Mitchum returns to the podcast. So does one Gregory Peck. We are covering a good Gregory Peck film. It is 1962's Cape Fear. Very much looking forward to covering that. I have not seen that before. Shane, I know you've seen it before and you're a fan of it, but I have never seen Cape Fear before, so looking forward to watching it for next Friday on the Golden Hour Film Podcast. I have been Harry Bailey.
I've been Shane Mahoney.
And we'll see you all then. Goodbye.